Hello, everyone. I hope you've had a good week. It's been an interesting week for us because of the rising number of cases in all the suburbs surrounding us. So, although we're not in lockdown, I do feel like it might be imminent. It's also been an interesting week because on Sunday, we took the boys to a playground and we were on this pump track, and I was on a scooter and I fell on my face and knees and arms, and so a bit banged up and bruised, but yeah, recovering. Have you ever wondered, if there is a good God and if He's in control, then why are there so many crazy things happening in the world? When bad things happen to us, how can we trust that God is actually leading? This is a question that Christians have had for generations. And the church in Philippi were wondering that very thing when their spiritual mentor Paul was imprisoned in Rome. And they're wondering, if God is leading, then how can this be? How could it be that Paul has been imprisoned for doing God's work? And Paul writes in the Book of Philippians the letter to them, and he's trying to reassure them, you know what? My imprisonment has actually advanced God's work. It has actually furthered God's work. And this is what he says. He says in Philippians chapter 1, verses 12 to 18, "Now I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that what has happened to me has actually served to advance the gospel. As a result, it has become clear throughout the whole palace guard and to everyone else that I am in chains for Christ. And because of my chains, most of the brothers and sisters have become confident in the Lord and dare all the more to proclaim the gospel without fear. It is true that some preach Christ out of envy and rivalry, but others out of goodwill. The latter do so out of love, knowing that I am put here for the defense of the gospel. The former preach Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, supposing that they can stir up trouble for me while I'm in chains. But what does it matter? The important thing is that in every way, whether from false motives or true, Christ is preached. And because of this, I rejoice." Paul is trying to get the believers in Philippi to look at his situation with a renewed mind. In verse 12, when he says that what has happened to him has actually advanced the cause of the gospel, that word advanced is a Greek military word that was used for when engineers would go ahead of the troops to open a new area. And so Paul is saying, hey, this imprisonment, my chains, have actually empowered my ministry and allowed me to reach new people. For example, he says the prison guards have gotten to know about Christ. Because you see, the Roman soldiers would be chained to him 24/7, and they would change every 6 hours. So that meant that every 24 hours, he has 4 people that he can tell about Jesus. He can share with them why he's been imprisoned. And not only that, but because he was a Christian, which was a new religious movement, the Roman officials were very curious about Paul. They were very curious about Christianity. And so they would interview him. He would often be taken to court to be interviewed, and everyone around the palace knew about Paul and knew why he was in chains. In verse 13, when Paul says, I am in chains for Christ, not only is he saying that he is imprisoned because of, him preaching about Jesus, but he's also saying, I'm sharing in the suffering of Jesus. Paul understands that the suffering of Jesus Christ led to the redemptive work of God. And in the same way, Paul believes that his own suffering is actually going to advance his ministry. It's going to open new ways for others to get to know about Jesus. And not only that, but Paul says that because of his imprisonment, other Christians are also empowered to do their work. Because if Paul can do this while in chains, surely they can do it while in freedom. And so more Christians are boldly going out and sharing about Jesus Christ. And even though not everyone is preaching Christ for the right motives, Paul rejoices in the fact that at the end of the day, Christ is preached. And he says, for this I rejoice. And so you see, Paul's joy came not from his circumstances, but from the fact that Jesus Christ is being shared and that people are finding freedom and peace in him. What about you? Where does your joy come from? Last year, I read something that really challenged and helped me personally. I read about a mom who lost one of her children to a car accident. And she said how that experience helped reshape her circumstances and her thinking. So that instead of saying, I have to take care of my children, she now says, I get to take care of my children. I get to wake up early. I get to wake up in the middle of the night and calm their nightmares. I get to feed them and, meet all their demands. And it really challenged me to reshape how I think. How many times do we say, I have to go to work, I have to do this errand? But what if we were to reshape our circumstances and say, I get to go to work? With this pandemic and this economic recession, what a privilege and a blessing it is to have work. I get to do the dishes because I actually have food that I can serve on those dishes. I actually have hands that can wash those dishes, right? When we reframe our circumstance to realize that there's an opportunity and a blessing in that moment, how much our lives can change. I wanted to show you something that I did in my Bible journaling. I saw this that someone did on Instagram, and it just said, find manna in your wilderness. And as you can see, I did this in May, during this pandemic, during the lockdown. Every day was such a struggle, but here's a promise that we can claim that in our difficult circumstance, there's actually a miracle to be found. Every day, God sent manna from heaven, bread from heaven. It was a miracle. And He sent just enough for that one day, and until the sixth day, and then He sent twice the amount for Sabbath. But the idea is that He gives us a miracle even in our desert circumstance. So even in the pandemic, I drew this as a reminder to myself that even in the midst of the difficult challenges, that there was a blessing, that there was something to be gleaned, something to be gathered, that there was something divine to be learned, and so yeah, it's a reminder to us that if we reframe our circumstances, there's actually opportunities and miracles and blessings and new paths, new people that we can reach for Christ. So, some challenge questions for you this week. What is it that you're going through right now? Maybe it's this pandemic, maybe it's the economic recession we're all going through, maybe it's your health or something else. Reframe your circumstance. How might we find the manna in the wilderness? How might God be using this situation to help you become a pioneer, an engineer, making new ground for God to work? And who might God be trying to reach through you? I hope and pray that you have a good week and that you're able to find the manna in the wilderness, to reframe your circumstance, and find the joy and count the blessing in our current situation. Take care and God bless.